A family story from North Carolina. Roast chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes, green beans. Everything looked as peaceful as it had for years, until I heard them. Through the half-closed door of my dining room, my daughter-in-law Vanessa whispers, "Make sure that's her glass. She'll be out before dessert." The words sliced the air. My hands froze on the tray, fingers tightening on the tarnished handles. Her glass? Out before dessert? My pulse stumbled. From the same room came the hesitant voice of my son, Daniel. "Are you sure?" And then, Vanessa's soft laugh, quick and cruel. "It's harmless. She'll sleep like a baby." My mind raced. Were they talking about me? Why so calm, so casual? My name is Eleanor Walker. I'm 70 years old, living in Myrtle, North Carolina. I've cooked in this kitchen since Daniel was a boy, never imagining it would become the place where I'd overhear a plan to put me quietly aside. I knew the meal I prepared wasn't the only thing on the table that night, but her plan would not reach its end. Subscribe if you like this kind of story. I lowered myself onto the oak chair, its surface polished smooth from decades of use. Candlelight flickered across the cream tablecloth, stretching Vanessa's shadow long and sharp like a blade. She lifted her wine glass, smile practiced, effortless, to family, to keeping things civil, crystal clinked. I touched my glass, but didn't drink. My silence wasn't empty, it was full. Full of grocery store lines where I clipped coupons just to afford Daniel's shoes in his senior year, shoes with the heels worn through, full of long mornings working at the library, afternoons stocking shelves at the market, right after my husband died, wearing a cheap coat that always smelled of detergent. All day I signed my name as a co-signer at the bank, so Daniel and Vanessa could have this house, and now I hear them whispering about drugging me under this very roof. I remembered Vanessa's voice, soft but sharp. "Maybe don't bring up gas bills or the mortgage at dinner, Mom." It feels out of place. And the way she once slid a pen across the table. "Just sign here." Standard form. Nothing to worry about, I had signed. Then they went home to heat up a can of soup, stretching it with leftover vegetables, while the better cuts of meat were delivered to their doorstep. I told myself, that's what family is for. And tonight from the dining room, I had heard her say, "Make sure that's her glass. She'll be out before dessert. If she starts about the mortgage again, not tonight. Not tonight. Not a word from me. Not the truth." My eyes drifted to the glass in front of me, a faint smudge of Vanessa's red nail polish still on the rim. A small sign, but enough. Enough to remind me what I had become in their eyes. I brushed a strand of hair back. My wedding ring, still cold on my finger after all these years, touched my temple. They say widows grow talkative, lonely. But I had chosen silence, and because I kept it for so long, they mistook it for weakness. Vanessa lowered her glass and smoothed her napkin with one finger, delicate, commanding. Her designer bag, worth more than a month of my home insurance, rested carelessly on the chair beside her. Across the table, Daniel's wrist flashed with the watch I had bought him for graduation. He looked down, avoiding me. I saw the 8-year-old boy who once clung to my hand at the schoolyard. Now he clung to Vanessa's silence. I laid my palm flat against the oak table. Beneath my skin were grooves and scratches carved by years of dinners, bills, overdue notices every time I said yes when I should have said no. Again, Vanessa smiled, her teeth catching the light. To keeping things civil. Civil? Peaceful? To her, it meant silencing me. I lifted my water glass, tilting it slightly. A droplet traced down the side, clear but bitter in my mind. I didn't speak. Silence was still mine, but this time it wasn't submission. It was a choice. They wanted peace tonight. So did I, but my peace would not be quiet. It would be the truth, put back in its place. I lean over the table and point at a cloudy spot on the rim. Let me refresh the water. No one objects. Vanessa is busy angling the candle. Daniel lines his knife with the edge of his plate, eyes low. I carry 2 glasses through the swinging kitchen door. It closes behind me with a soft click. The faucet hisses. Water beads against glass. Tick, tick, and the rosemary on my hands rises like a quiet reminder. On the counter, I set them side by side. One glass bears a faint streak of red polish on the rim, Vanessa's. The other is clear, mine. I dab the rims with a napkin, just a tidy hostess fussing over shine. From the dining room, her voice stretches the word family as if posing for a picture. A thin draft slips under the door, carrying candle wax and cold air. I switch their places, not fast. Just the ordinary choreography of a woman who has straightened tables her whole life. I count 1, 2, 3, and ease them down so they don't leave a wet ring. I shut off the faucet. Back at the table, I set the clear glass at my place and the red-marked glass in front of Vanessa. The touch of glass to wood makes a small, neat tap. In the candlelight, everything looks innocent. No one notices. Vanessa lifts her wine, smile fixed. Daniel doesn't. He stares at the faint circle of condensation blooming on the cloth, his Adam's apple tightening. His fingers pinch the fork, then let go. His mouth parts as if to speak. Only a breath escapes. Silence hangs between us, thin as wire. I slide into my chair. My palms are dry. I look at the water standing still in front of Vanessa, flat as a pressed page. The candle wavers once in the air from the vent, then steadies. Dinner begins, and everything is in a different place. Vanessa set her wineglass down, fingers gliding along the stem as if polishing it. She launched into another safe story about a new recipe she tried, but halfway through, her hand lifted to her temple. Just a touch, as though brushing away an invisible hair. Daniel's fork scraped against his plate, a small, sharp ting in the hush. My eyes drifted to the water glass in front of her. The faint streak of red polish still clung to the rim, steady as a punctuation mark. Vanessa blinked more often now. She inhaled once, twice, and took another sip of water, her throat working harder this time. "It's just warm in here," she murmured, a brittle smile on her lips. But the room wasn't warm. The air conditioning hummed steadily and coolly. Only her forehead was damp. The atmosphere pulled tight. Even the tablecloth seemed to stretch under the weight of silence. Then she reached for the spoon, placing it crooked, off-center, the first mistake of the evening. Her right hand searched for balance on the edge of the table, sliding over a ring of condensation. A wet streak glistened across her skin. "Could you pass the salt?" Her voice snagged, breaking the word into two uneven pieces. Daniel shoved the salt shaker toward her, but stopped short of touching it. His eyes caught the truth. He saw her knees sag beneath the table, the subtle collapse of her shoulders. His throat bobbed. "Vanessa, are you okay?" Her mouth open. No answer. A breath, a stutter. Then her body leaned almost delicately sideways. The chair groaned against the wood floor, a long scrape, and the napkin slipped from her lap, falling like a pale flag onto the rug. I was already on my feet. Not rushing. Just steady. I stepped behind her, lifted the water glass from its place, and carried it to the kitchen like any hostess tidying her table. Daniel was at her side now, hands gripping her shoulders, voice thin with panic. She's faint," he stammered, dialing his phone with one hand. In the kitchen, I turned the faucet. Water roared. I tilted the glass and poured the remainder down the drain. Colorless, odorless. A trickle of soap along the rim erased the last trace. One droplet clung to the stem, slid down, and landed with a neat tap in the sink. When I returned, Daniel was crouched beside the sofa, phone pressed to his ear, giving the address. Vanessa lay stretched out, eyelids fluttering, lips pale. The scent of her perfume, sharp floral, rose above the smell of roasted rosemary still lingering on my hands. I didn't say a word. I bent down, retrieved the napkin from the floor, folded it neatly in half, and set it back on the table. The dinner remained intact in appearance, but the roles, those had already changed. Daniel crouched by the sofa, phone pressed hard to his ear. His voice cracked in pieces. "Yes, my wife, she just collapsed. She's breathing, but she's pale. Please, we need help." The operator's voice bled faintly through the receiver. "How long has she been unconscious?" Daniel checked her wrist, fingers trembling. "Not long." "Seconds. She was fine, then dizzy, then—" His words tangled. "She's under stress. Maybe blood sugar, maybe exhaustion. I don't know." I stood a few feet away, hands folded. Perfume, rosemary, candle wax, still thick in the room. I watched him. He didn't look at me. He knows what she put in that glass. He knows. And still his story is exhaustion, not poison. "Does she have any medical conditions?" the operator asked. Daniel swallowed, fumbling. "No, nothing serious. Some anxiety, sometimes trouble sleeping. But she—" His throat closed, then steadied. She's healthy. She's strong. He wrapped that word around her like armor. And what does that make me? The fragile one who can be drugged for peace? The obstacle to be managed, not the mother who raised him? Stay calm, the operator said. Help is on the way. Keep her on her side. Make sure her airway is clear. Daniel rolled her gently, brushing hair from her damp forehead. You hear that, honey? Ambulance is coming. You'll be okay. Just hold on. His voice, tender, urgent, every syllable stitched with fear. I remembered when that same desperation once belonged to me, when he woke from nightmares, calling Mommy. Now it was reserved for her, not me. Never me anymore. The siren began low in the distance, climbing, pressing against the silence of the room. Daniel spoke into the phone again. Yes, front door's unlocked. We'll be here. Please hurry. He looked up at last. His eyes skimmed past me like glass sliding over water. Mom, can you grab a blanket? She's cold. I went to the hall closet, pulled the old wool blanket, the same one I used to wrap him in when fever shook his little body. I laid it over Vanessa's legs. Thanks, he murmured, eyes fixed only on her. The siren stopped outside. Red lights pulsed through the curtains. Boots thundered up the porch. 2 medics entered, brisk, efficient, voices clipped. What do we have? Collapsed at dinner, Daniel answered fast, eager, dizzy, slurred speech, then out. Breathing shallow. She hasn't eaten much. Long week at work. Probably low blood sugar. He offered them an easy box to tick. And nothing about the glass. Nothing about the plan. Nothing about the silence he chose instead of truth. The medics clipped sensors and checked monitors. Green numbers blinked. Vitals are off but stable. Likely exhaustion, maybe stress. The word floated in the air like smoke. I'd lived with stress seared into my bones for decades. No one ever called an ambulance for me. We'll take her in, one medic said. Get fluids, blood work. Yes, please, Daniel replied quickly, relief spilling. They lifted her onto the stretcher. The blanket slipped, brushed the floor. I bent, picked it up, folded it carefully, and smoothed the crease. Even now, I'm the one tidying up what they drop. The house was hollow, only the clock ticked, steady, unforgiving, while the air still carried the mixed scent of wax and rosemary. I pulled the old wool blanket across my lap, the same one I used to wrap Daniel in when fever shook his small body, and stared into the empty space ahead. Peace. That's what they call this? The smell pulled me backward, back to the years when I first learned what survival meant. After my husband died, I worked 2 shifts, mornings at the library, afternoons at the grocery store. My coat was thin, always sharp with the smell of cheap detergent, my hands cracked from cold water. On winter nights, I stood in the checkout line at Walmart, clutching a crumpled stack of coupons, counting every cent to buy Daniel a clearance pair of shoes for $19.99. His old pair had split at the sole, too far gone for stitching. I'd come home with numb fingers, make soup from bones and wilted greens, stretching it across the week. Back then, every dollar had its place. And now, in my own kitchen, my voice has no place at all. I remembered the day at the bank. Green plastic chairs, air conditioning hissing. The clerk slid the pen across the desk. Just a standard form. The bold number stared up at me. $328,000. I hesitated 3 seconds, then signed the co-signer line so Daniel and Vanessa could buy their house. For the next 72 months, I paid $1,650 each month, nearly $120,000 in all. Add to that the cell plan at $245, the insurance at $310, the gas card that ballooned from $220 to $410, and something called Executive Essentials at $89. On tonight's tablecloth, a ring of condensation from a water glass still glistened, a perfect circle like the debits that drained from my account, month after month. Every signature, every transfer, what I really signed was a habit, every blank filled with Mom. I thought of the first dinner where Vanessa corrected me. Don't bring up bills at the table. It's not refined, soon. The floral dishes my mother left me were boxed up, replaced with sterile white plates. The curtains I'd sewn were swapped for stiff gray panels called modern, and I stayed quiet. Quiet when the gas card doubled. Quiet when my questions sank under her polished smile. That quiet, in the end, became a glass of water with something hidden in it. Once I had small wants. A knitting class for $40 I canceled, telling myself, this month is tight. A bus ride for $7 to the Arboretum I postponed, waiting for a better time. In the wooden recipe box, the lemon bar page has been folded since 1998. I almost never baked it for myself. All my life I knew how to nurture others. Myself, I let lie fallow. Now, sitting in this empty room, I can see each moment I gave ground. The first time I let someone call truth bad energy. The first time I allowed my voice to be boxed out of dinner. And Daniel, my boy, learned from me that silence was survival. It was I who taught him that lesson. I smoothed the blanket, listening to the clock. Number. Peace isn't swallowing words. Peace is reclaiming them. Peace is ending the payments that keep me chained. I reached for my notebook, flipped to a clean page, and wrote, Autopay, cell plan, insurance, gas card, executive essentials. Each line is a tether. I pressed the pen into the page and left a dark, final dot. Tomorrow, I will cut them loose. Morning light broke through the blinds, soft but relentless, painting thin bars across the kitchen table. I set my teacup down and opened the laptop. The familiar chime of the banking site filled the silence. My fingers hovered, then typed the password I'd used for years. Letters from my husband's name. The screen blinked and the list unfurled. Cell plan, $245.76. Home insurance, $310.12. Gas card, this month, $417.05. Executive essentials monthly, $89.99. Line after line, scheduled, automatic, precise. The kind of precision that bleeds you slow. I scrolled further, private school tuition, car insurance, even the gym membership that no one had used since the second week. Dozens of transfers, stacked like bricks. 72 months of mortgage, $1,650 each, a total of nearly $120,000. Add to that the loans, the credit card emergencies, the whispered phone calls that always began with, Mom, can you help just this once? 17 years. That's how long I'd been carrying them. 17 years of my name written on checks, my hands signing for debts that weren't mine. I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me, and let the screen glow against my face. Outside, a lawnmower droned in the distance, the ordinary hum of a neighborhood that had no idea what was happening inside this kitchen. Then the truth came down like a hammer. 17 years of paying their way, and last night their thanks was to drug my drink, to make sure I stayed quiet in front of the candles and the roast chicken. The numbers blurred for a moment. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, then looked again. They hadn't changed. They never changed. The kettle clicked off behind me, steam curling into the air. I didn't move to pour. My eyes stayed on the screen, on the neat columns of betrayal measured in dollars and cents. This was the cost of my silence. And for the first time I understood, I had paid enough. The bank's hold music crackled through the phone, a thin loop of violins stretched too far. I sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, every charge written in my own careful hand. My pen rested on the page like a weapon. A click, a bright voice came through. Good morning, Mrs. Walker. This is Colleen at First Carolina Federal. How can I assist you today? I cleared my throat. My voice was calm, steadier than I expected. I need to review the automatic transfers on my accounts, and I'd like to suspend a number of them, possibly all. Of course. Let me pull that up. I heard the faint tapping of keys. Yes, I see 3 active accounts. Checking, savings, and a joint account with your son. There are 72 active transactions scheduled. Would you like me to read them back? No, I said chwao, not one by one. Suspend everything. Effective immediately. Silence. Then a softer, more professional tone. Mrs. Walker, just to confirm, you'd like all scheduled payments paused? That will include utilities, tuition, insurance, fuel cards. All of them, I repeated. If anyone has a question, they can call me. Not the bank. My hand stayed steady on the table. For years, I'd expected it to shake, that my voice would crack with guilt. Instead, it was clear, almost unrecognizable, like someone else had taken the line. Understood, she said. I'm initiating a suspension of all transfers now. They will remain paused until we receive further instructions from you, in writing or in person. Good, I replied. Send confirmation to my attorney, Richard Davidson. A pause, then the polite efficiency returned. It's done. You'll receive documentation by mail within 5 business days. Thank you. I ended the call before she could wish me a nice day. The kitchen went still again. I closed the notebook, set the pen down, and drew in a long breath. For the first time in 17 years, I felt the ground shift, not under me, but back beneath my feet. Control, mine. Again. 3 p.m. The last page slid out of the printer, warm against my hand. I placed it on the pile with the others. Auto pays, suspended. Joint account, closed. Power of attorney, revoked. 3 thin sheets of paper, but they weighed like bricks. For years, I had been buried under their signatures. Today, I stacked my own on top. I didn't rush. I brewed tea in the old porcelain pot, the one Vanessa once called outdated. Loose leaves, steeped slow, steam curling in the late light. I carried the cup to the table, sat down, and let it cool before I drank. That was the difference now. Time was mine. 4 p.m., I gathered the keys. From the junk drawer, from the sewing kit, from the coat pocket with the lining half torn. Every secret spare they thought gave them quiet access. I dropped them into a ceramic bowl, one by one. Clink, clink, clink. The sound was bright, almost cheerful. Revenge didn't roar. It chimed. At the counter, 2 glasses waited out of habit. Always 2, never 1. I filled mine, took a sip. The second I carried to the sink, let the faucet run until the water turned cold, and poured it out. I set the glass upside down, dripping on the rack. Their glass, their plan, emptied, drained, finished. 5 p.m. I walked to the entryway and taped Richard Davidson's card to an envelope. On the front, I wrote in block letters, all communication through counsel. No welcome mat, no open arms. Just a sign that the rules had changed. Back in the living room, I pulled open the curtains wide. The late sun poured in, soft and golden, touching the rug, the old mirror, the silver tray on the sideboard. This was not the house of a victim. It was the stage of a quiet reclamation. I leaned back in the chair, the tea still warm in my hands. Outside, the world kept moving. Children's laughter on the street, a lawnmower starting somewhere down the block. Inside, time stretched calm and deliberate. 17 years, I had been their banker, their safety net, their silence. Now, every tick of the clock, every sip of tea said the same thing. The debt has come due, and I am collecting in full. The first crack was small. Daniel pressed his phone to his ear that morning and heard nothing but a flat tone. Your service has been temporarily suspended due to non-payment. He frowned, tried again, then swore under his breath. Around him, the office hummed with normalcy, keyboards clattering, someone laughing at the far end of the hall. But in his cubicle, the silence grew heavy. At noon, his inbox chimed. A subject line blinked at him in red. Mortgage overdue. Immediate action required. He clicked. The balance stared back. $1,650. Past due. A penalty has already been applied. His chest tightened. For years, those notices had never reached him. They went to his mother. She handled them. Quietly, predictably, like the weather. Vanessa's heels struck sharply across the tile as she walked into the room, phone in hand. Daniel, my card just declined at the gas station. What's happening? Did you forget to pay again? He rubbed his forehead, stalling. No, Mom always... He stopped. The words caught in his throat, sour. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So she just stopped? Her voice cut like glass. After all these years, she decides now? Daniel turned away from her glare, stared instead at the laptop screen, the overdue notice pulsing like a wound. In his ears, a different sound replayed. The night before, his mother's voice, low and unshaking. I heard you. The words echoed insistent like the tick of a clock in an empty house. He grabbed his phone, thumb shaking against the glass. He dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. The hollow sound of a call unanswered. Vanessa folded her arms. Call again. He did. Again, no answer. This time the line clicked to voicemail. This is Eleanor Walker. Please leave a message. The robotic flatness of the recording was worse than a shouted curse. Daniel lowered the phone slowly, staring at the black screen. His jaw worked, but no words came. Across the table, Vanessa's anger simmered, waiting to boil, but neither of them spoke. The silence stretched thick as tar, filling the room. It was in that silence that Daniel understood. The cord had been cut. His mother's voice, absent, carried more weight than all the years of her compliance. The numbers in his inbox glowed mercilessly. $1,650 past due. The line between past and present had finally snapped, and in its place stood nothing but quiet. Late afternoon. The sun cut long bars of gold across the porch. I had just set the kettle down when a car pulled up. Doors closed softly, the kind of soft that wanted no attention. Then the knock, quick, deliberate. Vanessa stood on the step. Hair pulled back, dress plain, perfume faint. A smile fixed to her face, practiced like a photo pose. Daniel lingered behind her, phone clutched tight as if it might shield him. "Hi, Mom," Vanessa began, voice sugar-sweet. "We thought we should clear the air. Can we come in?" I kept the door half open. "Say it here." Daniel shifted, eyes on the porch boards. Vanessa's smile didn't flicker. "Last night, it got messy. Everyone was tense. I just wanted dinner to be peaceful, that's all." "Peaceful," I repeated. The word left my mouth heavy, flat. Daniel's voice came low, awkward. "We didn't mean to upset you. Things have just been stressful." In my head, stressful for who? For the ones who call my wallet family? Vanessa tilted her head, softer now. "You know how grateful we are." "Truly." "No one denies that." The clock inside ticked on. I stayed silent. Daniel turned his wedding ring, the phone in his pocket buzzing once, screen flashing red before he shoved it deep. Vanessa tried again. "I hate to think you're hurt. I never wanted that. We're family. We need each other." "Family," I said, steady. "Funny word." Her smile wavered just slightly. Daniel still hadn't met my eyes. I placed my hand on the edge of the door, holding it at that narrow angle. "If you came here to talk, then talk. But don't rehearse it like a commercial." The wind rattled the trees, scattering a few dry leaves across the step. We stood there. They wrapped in soft words, me in silence. The air thickened, waiting for the next crack. The silence stretched too long. Vanessa's smile broke first. "You cut the payments." Her tone sharpened, every trace of sweetness stripped away. "Phone's dead, mortgages overdue, cards declined." "You think that's fair? After everything we've managed?" Daniel flinched. "Vanessa." "No, Daniel." She turned on him, then back to me. "She needs to hear it. You know how much we've put into holding this family together? And now she pulls the rug out like we're leeches." Leeches, I thought. The word almost made me laugh. 17 years, and that's what they feared being called. Daniel tried again, quieter. "Mom, maybe we can..." "Can what?" Vanessa snapped. "She's the reason we're sinking now. She signed up to help us, to be part of this. What kind of mother just walks away?" I leaned on the door frame, steady. A mother who's been treated as a checkbook, not a person. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Her voice rose, the practiced charm gone. "You're being dramatic? You think it's easy for us? The house, the kids, the bills. Do you know how much that costs? You think your precious help was charity? No, it was investment." "For family investment," I repeated in my head. Numbers on a ledger, that's all I was to her. Aloud, I said, 17 years. $120,000 in mortgage alone. Add tuition, insurance, gas, credit cards. Shall I keep going? Vanessa's mouth opened, shut. Her hands curled tight at her sides. Daniel looked like a boy again, caught between two storms. And what did I get in return? My voice didn't rise, but it cut through. A glass meant to put me to sleep at my own table. The words landed like a stone in water. The ripples showed on their faces, Vanessa paling, Daniel staring down at his shoes. The mask was gone now, no smiles, no honey. Only the raw edge of truth, sharp enough to draw blood. Silence pinned us to the porch. Then I straightened, and whatever softness was left in my voice burned off. "No," I said. "There isn't forgiveness here." Vanessa blinked. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. You drugged my glass to stage a peaceful dinner, I went on. That wasn't peace. That was control. And you? I looked at Daniel, heard it, and chose the easy side. I set a heavy white envelope on the porch table. Names typed, dates stamped. These are the facts, I said. All automatic payments are suspended. The joint account is closed. Power of attorney revoked. My will updated. You are not beneficiaries. You will not be again, Vanessa found her voice. You can't just... I can, I said, and I did. I held out my palm. Keys. Daniel hesitated, then slid a small brass key from his ring. It shook on the way to my hand. I dropped it into the blue ceramic dish by the door. The sound, clean, final. You will not come here unannounced, I said. If you need to speak to me, do it in writing. Through counsel. If you show up again, I will call the police. That is the new order of Vanessa's control cracked. So you're cutting us off and calling it virtue? I'm calling it proportion, I said. 17 years I paid. Last night you tried to put me to sleep so my questions wouldn't ruin your picture. That's not a family problem. That's a character problem. Daniel took a half step toward me. Mom, what do you want from us? Not a thing, I said. Earn your life. Pay your bills. Stop mistaking my love for an obligation to subsidize your denial. Wind moved through the trees, lifting a curl of hair from Vanessa's temple. The light was thinning. The day had chosen its side. This happened, I added steady, because you learned to value image over truth, and I taught you, by signing, by swallowing, that I would accept it. That ends now. I opened the door, not to invite them in, but to make room for air. The hinges sighed. Leave. They did. Vanessa first, chin high, with anger she couldn't spend. Daniel after, smaller than I remembered, glancing once at the key dish like it might speak. When the car's sound faded, I closed the door and set the envelope on the hall table. The house felt bright and bare, like a room finally cleared of the wrong furniture. I did not forgive. I did not explain. I chose the only thing that would make any future worth having. Peace. Not the kind poured into a glass and forced down someone's throat. The kind you earn by saying no and meaning it. Morning came gray, rain hanging in the air like a thin veil. I set the kettle on the stove and opened my laptop. 2 emails waited at the top of the inbox, cold as stamped paper. Transfer suspension confirmation, every autopay canceled. Power of attorney revocation confirmed, authority stripped clean. I scrolled down, saw the timestamp, my name, and the lawyer's signature. Precise, irreversible, done. The doorbell rang, sharp, short. Through the peephole, Daniel standing in the drizzle, his shirt blotched darker by the rain. Vanessa beside him, clutching her bag to her chest, lips pressed thin. I didn't open. They knocked again, harder this time, then softer, almost pleading. Finally, Daniel bent down and slid a thick manila envelope under the door. I picked it up, damp at the edges, heavy with papers. I took a pen, clipped Richard Davidson's business card to the flap, and wrote in steady block letters, all communication through counsel. Then I shoved it back out. The paper scraped across the floor, harsh as a verdict. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Vanessa's voice, low, reaching for sweetness. Eleanor, can we? All through the lawyer, I said. Today, tomorrow, always. I ended the call. The sound of the rain on the porch boards filled the silence, tapping like knuckles against wood. Then it happened. A yellow past due notice slipped from Daniel's files, slapped wet against the porch step. The red letters bled through the envelope. Past due, $1,650 plus $87.50 late fee. The ink blurred in the drizzle. Daniel bent to grab it, his hand trembling. Vanessa turned her head, mascara running in faint streaks. They didn't look at me. They couldn't. I stood behind the door, heartbeat steady, watching their silence tell me everything. When their car finally pulled away, I called the locksmith. Half an hour later, the smell of brass and oil filled the hall. The man worked quick, screws turning, plates sliding free. Click, click. The old lock gone, the new one sliding in smooth, snug final. I pried up the fake rock under the flower bed, the one they used for a spare key, and tossed it into the trash. Above the door, the new video doorbell blinked green. its tiny eye catching the empty porch. Back in the kitchen, the kettle gave a sharp ping as it finished. I poured myself a full cup and carried it to the window. The street outside was washed in silver, rain streaking the glass. Inside, the house was quiet, not punishment anymore. Possession. I laid my hand on the new bolt, twisted it once. The sound, solid, final, settled in my chest like the truth I'd waited 17 years to say. Not exile, not loss, just mine. The rain cleared by noon. Sun pushed a clean stripe across the kitchen floor, and for the first time in years, I used it like a workbench. I spread my papers out. Bank statements, a yellow legal pad, a calculator that clicked like a metronome. I wrote one simple line at the top. 6 months of me. Food, utilities, property tax, meds, gas. I totaled it twice. $2,000 a month. $12,000 set aside, non-negotiable. I moved that cushion into a high-yield savings account, watched the new balance bloom on the screen. Then I built a small ladder. 3 CDs, $10,000 each at 6, 12, and 18 months, staggered so money returns like seasons. The rest stayed in checking, lean and purposeful. I closed the browser and didn't reopen it just to stare. Control isn't looking. It's deciding. The house came next. I pulled down the stiff gray curtains Vanessa had called modern. The fabric sighed when the rod slid free, a tired metallic whisper. I folded them once and set them in the donation box with the blender I never used and the hard-edged vase that scraped against every bouquet. From the hall closet, I lifted my mother's old floral curtains, soft cotton, a little sun-faded, and clipped them in place. Afternoon light poured through like warm tea. The room didn't look stylish. It looked like mine. I set a timer and did one more small thing I'd postponed for years. I registered for the $40 knitting class at the community center. The form asked for reason for enrolling. I typed, hands that make, not only pay. Then I checked the bus schedule, $7 to the Arboretum on Saturday. I circled the time in pen the color of cherries. By 4 o'clock, the kitchen smelled like 1998. I unfolded the old recipe card, lemon bars, the crease still worn where I'd bent it decades ago. Butter softened under my palm, flour dusted the counter in a quiet drift, and lemon zest brightened the air until the room felt awake. When the pan came out, I shook a snow of powdered sugar on top and waited for the set. I plated 1 square on 1 plate with 1 fork, poured tea, and ate, standing at the sink with the window open. The pastry snapped under the knife, tart and sweet and defiantly simple. A dessert for a party of 1 and not a bit lonely. Richard Davidson called at dusk. "Your revisions are filed," he said. "Joint accounts terminated, power of attorney revoked, will update it as you instructed." "And the charitable bequests?" I asked. "Noted and signed. County Library and the Widows' Relief Fund. Good." I took the pen on my desk and wrote a single line across the copy he'd couriered over. Kindness is a gift, not a contract. I underlined the gift once. No flourish. I carried the donation box to the car, gray curtains on top, the blender rattling as if it wanted one last say. On my way back in, I paused at the doorway and listened. No hum of someone else's needs. No phone vibrating with just one more favor. Only the soft tick of the wall clock and the drift of lemon in the air. I didn't check my messages. I sat by the window until the light went blue and the floral curtains became shadows. The house didn't feel empty. It felt cleared, like a field after harvest, ready for whatever I chose to plant. Tomorrow I'd ride the bus to the Arboretum and let green things teach me about growing without permission. Tonight I washed the plate and set it in the rack alone. The quiet wasn't a sentence anymore. It was a deed in my name. Night deepened, and with it came the kind of quiet I once mistook for punishment. Tonight I knew better. This silence wasn't exile, it was freedom. I thought back to the words that had carried me here. They poisoned my drink at the family dinner. I switched glasses. That moment wasn't just survival, it was the beginning of a reckoning. For years, I signed checks and swallowed insults, teaching everyone, even myself, that endurance was love. But endurance without respect is decay. I learned that late, but not too late. Now, the locks were new, the accounts were mine. The future, mine to build, even at 70, especially at 70. I'd been called dramatic, difficult, and inconvenient. And yet here I stood, proof that none of those words was the end of me. I am not a checkbook. I am not a placeholder in someone else's story. I am a woman who has lived through betrayal and found her spine still intact. If there's a lesson in this house tonight, it's simple. Kindness is a gift, not a contract. And when that gift is mocked, manipulated, or drugged into silence, you have the right, no, the duty, to take it back. So to anyone still shrinking at someone else's table, let me tell you this. You are not too much. You are not past your time. You are exactly enough for the life that waits when you stop apologizing for it. I turned off the lamp, the house settling into its own breath. The quiet pressed close, not heavy, not cold, simply whole. And in that wholeness I found my justice. Not in revenge, not in forgiveness, but in the power to close one door and open my own. Thanks for listening. If this made you think, or if you've lived through something similar, share your thoughts in the comments. Our channel is a space for sharing tales of the elderly woman and family revenge stories from people who have weathered life's storms. Subscribe for more, because sometimes the deepest form of revenge is simply living on your own terms,